That feeling of your own body feeling, well, foreign, almost like a landscape just unexpectedly changing.
Mm-hmm.
For people living with vitiligo, where skin loses its color in these unpredictable patches, that's a constant experience.
Yeah.
It can be really frustrating and often carries a real emotional weight, too.
Absolutely.
But today, we're doing a deep dive into some genuinely exciting developments. We're talking new therapies emerging from research that honestly offer a lot of hope for more effective ways to manage vitiligo.
Exactly. We've been looking at this really comprehensive review article that focuses right in on these promising new treatments, the ones currently being tested in clinical trials.
Okay.
It's a fascinating look, really, at where the science of vitiligo treatment is headed.
Okay, great. So just to get everyone on the same page, let's quickly recap what vitiligo actually is.
Sure.
It's a chronic condition where the immune system, for reasons we're still fully pinning down, mistakenly attacks the melanocytes.
The pigment cells.
Think of melanocytes as the tiny factories in your skin that produce melanin, the pigment giving us our skin color. When these factories are damaged or destroyed, you get those characteristic white patches.
And it's actually more common than many people realize. It affects roughly, 0.5 to 2% of people worldwide?
Yes, something like that.
And it's definitely more than just a cosmetic issue. Particularly for people with darker skin tones, the contrast can be, more pronounced.
Right.
And that can lead to real psychosocial challenges like anxiety, feeling stigmatized.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, it often kicks off before age 30, so it can impact self-esteem and identity during some really formative life stages.
Yes, that's a really important point. And while there are existing treatments, things like creams to calm the immune system, light therapy, even some surgical options.
Sure, the standard approaches.
Yeah, the review we looked at points out that the results can often be, let's just say, not always as good as people hope.
Unsatisfactory. Yeah, that's fair.
Which is exactly why this search for new strategies is so vital. So our mission today is really to understand the most promising of these new drug candidates, the ones being put through their paces in clinical trials right now.
Okay. And to understand how these new treatments work, it really helps to have a basic picture of what's going wrong in vitiligo, at a biological level.
Right.
There are really two main things happening. First is that overactive immune system attacking the pigment cells.
Okay.
This involves a pretty complex chain of events, including something called the JAK-STAT pathway and other immune signals. Think of it like the body's defense system just misidentifying the skin's own color-producing cells as invaders.
Okay, so that's the immune system in overdrive. Got it. What's the second part?
The second aspect is more related to the health and survival of the melanocytes themselves.
Ah, the pigment cells.
Exactly. Even if you manage to calm down the immune attack, the pigment cells still need to be able to function properly and, importantly, multiply to bring the color back.
Right.
This involves various processes inside the cells, like how they handle stress, how they produce melanin, that sort of thing. So the new therapies, they're often designed to target one or sometimes both of these issues.
So either dampening the immune attack?
Or boosting the health and function of the melanocytes. Or both.
Got it. So the new drugs are trying to either tell the immune system to kind of stand down or give the pigment cells a helping hand.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, let's dive into the specifics then. Starting with JK inhibitors. These seem to be getting a lot of attention lately.
Absolutely. That JAK-STAT pathway we just mentioned, it's really central to that immune attack in vitiligo.
Okay.
What's interesting is that research has found certain parts of this pathway, specifically proteins called JAK1 and JAK3, are, more active in people with vitiligo.
More active. Okay.
And there's this important immune signal called IFN gamma, interferon gamma. It plays a big role here.
How so?
Well, it basically tells other skin cells to release these chemicals, like CXCL9 and CXCL10.
Okay, chemical.
And you can imagine these chemicals as like breadcrumbs.
Ah, right. You mentioned breadcrumbs before.
Yeah, exactly. They attract the very immune cells, specifically these CD8 plus T cells, that then target and destroy the melanocytes.
Wow, okay. It's a chain reaction.
It is. So if we can block this JAK-STAT pathway, maybe with a JAK inhibitor.
Then you interrupt the chain.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
You can hopefully interrupt this whole destructive sequence of events.
And the really big news here, the thing that got everyone talking, is that a cream containing ruxolitinib became the first FDA-approved topical JAK inhibitor specifically for non-segmental vitiligo.
That's right. July 2022 for people 12 and older.
That's a major milestone.
It truly is a huge step forward. Ruxolitinib specifically targets JAK1 and JAK2.
JAK1 and 2, okay.
What's fascinating is how this potential treatment was even discovered.
Whoa.
Well, doctors observed that some patients with alopecia areata, that's another autoimmune condition, causes hair loss who are taking oral ruxolitinib.
The pill form.
Right. They sometimes experienced repigmentation of their skin. Completely unexpected.
Wow. Serendipity.
Pretty much. And that finding directly led to developing the topical cream for vitiligo.
So the review mentions several clinical trials for this ruxolitinib cream. What were the key things we learned from those studies? Did it work?
Yeah, we've seen some very encouraging results. One of the early studies, where people applied the cream twice a day, showed significant improvement in facial color repigmentation in several participants.
Okay, promising start.
Then larger, more rigorous trials compared different strengths and application frequencies of the cream against the placebo, a cream with no active drug.
The gold standard comparison.
Exactly. And these trials showed that the ruxolitinib cream led to a notably higher percentage of patients achieving significant improvement in the color on their face. FVASI score improvement, they call it, compared to those using the placebo cream.
FVASI, facial score. Okay.
And what's maybe even more promising are the longer-term follow-up studies. They show that with continued use, like up to 2 years,
Wow, that's a long time.
many patients continue to see even greater repigmentation, which is great news.
That really is great news, especially for those who might not see results straight away. It suggests persistence pays off.
It seems so.
Were there any significant side effects reported with the cream? That's always a concern.
Generally, the side effects reported in the ruxolitinib cream trials were mild. Things like some redness or itching right where they applied the cream, application site reactions.
Okay, mostly local stuff. Manageable.
Seems that way. And the review also notes that research is ongoing. There's a study specifically looking at vitiligo in the genital area.
Right, sensitive area.
And another completed study that combined the cream with NB-UVB phototherapy that's a common light treatment for vitiligo, though the results of that combination study haven't actually been published yet.
Okay, so still more data to come. But ruxolitinib is clearly leading the way. But there are other JAK inhibitors being investigated too, right? The review listed quite a few.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like scientists are really focusing on this JAK-STAT pathway.
That's a very insightful point. The sheer number of other JAK inhibitors in development really highlights the strong belief in targeting this pathway. It's definitely a hot area.
So what else is in the pipeline?
Well, there's tofacitinib. It blocks JAK1 and JAK3.
1 and 3, okay. Different combo.
Right. There's an interesting case report where a topical 2% tofacitinib cream led to significant return of pigment.
Just one case, but still.
Still interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
And some research suggests that combining it with light therapy might be particularly beneficial. Now, oral tofacitinib has some known safety concerns, black box warnings.
Right, I've heard about that.
So the focus is really on developing safe and effective topical versions. There's currently a phase 1 trial underway for a topical tofacitinib formulation.
Makes sense. What about baratinib? That one targets JAK1 and JAK2, similar to ruxolitinib, right?
Yes, same targets. We saw a case where a patient who hadn't responded well to another treatment saw good repigmentation after switching to baratinib. And some lab studies, in vitro stuff, also indicated that baricitinib might actually help boost melanin production itself.
Oh, interesting. So maybe a dual effect.
Potentially. A phase 2 trial explored combining baricitinib with NB-UVB phototherapy.
A combination again?
Yep. And it found a significant improvement in the overall severity of vitiligo, the VSI score, compared to placebo after about 9 months, 36 weeks.
Good results. Any downsides?
Well, it's important to note some participants in the baricitinib group did report side effects like back pain. And there was one instance of a pulmonary embolism in that particular study group.
Whoa, okay. A blood clot. That's serious.
It is. It really underscores the need for careful safety monitoring in all these trials.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on. Upadacitinib that specifically targets JAK1, also in the mix.
Yes. There was a report of a patient who had both vitiligo and eczema atopic dermatitis.
Okay.
They saw improvement in their vitiligo while being treated with upadacitinib for their eczema, another hint from a related condition.
Right.
And a phase 2 study, specifically for vitiligo, indicated that a higher dose of upadacitinib led to a greater proportion of patients feeling their lesions were less noticeable.
Subjective improvement, which is important.
Very important. and reporting a better quality of life, too. So there's now a larger phase 3 study in progress to evaluate it further.
Phase 3, okay. Getting serious. And then there's ritlecitinib. This one targets JAK3 and another related enzyme called TEC.
That's right, JAK3 and TEC kinase.
And interestingly, it's already approved for alopecia areata, that other autoimmune hair loss condition we mentioned.
Exactly. This connection between autoimmune conditions just keeps popping up.
Yeah.
A phase 2b trial showed that different doses of ritlecitinib led to significant improvement in facial vitiligo, the FVSI score again.
Okay.
The way ritlecitinib works seems to involve dampening down certain immune signals, including IL-15.
IL-15.
Yeah, which is also thought to play a role in vitiligo by affecting those tissue-resident memory T cells, the ones that might hang around in the skin.
Ah, the persistent ones.
Exactly. So hitting IL-15 might be important for longer-lasting results. A phase 3 trial for ritlecitinib in vitiligo is currently ongoing as well.
Wow, the list just goes on. Afatinib, povorcitinib, sergelininib. It really does seem like there's a real flurry of activity in this whole area of JAK inhibition.
Yeah, it really is. Just briefly on those others, afatinib blocks both JKK1 and JK3, showed some encouraging early results for facial vitiligo.
Okay.
Povorcitinib selectively inhibits JAK1. It's already used for another inflammatory skin condition, hidradenitis suppurativa.
Right, HS.
And it's now in phase 3 trials for vitiligo after a phase 2 study, though the results of that phase 2 haven't been released yet.
Gotcha. And sergelininib.
That one inhibits both SYK, another immune signaling molecule, and JK, but not JK2. It was tested as a topical gel in a phase 2A trial, and those results are also pending.
Okay.
But yeah, the sheer number of JK inhibitors being explored really underscores the enthusiasm, maybe even the hope, for this approach to treating vitiligo.
Okay, so JK inhibitors, clearly a major area of focus, but the review also discusses other emerging strategies. Let's switch gears. Statin inhibitors are mentioned next. Simvastatin, the common cholesterol-lowering drug, pops up here. That's a bit surprising.
It is an interesting bit of drug repurposing, isn't it? Simvastatin, one of the statins, has been found to have effects beyond just lowering cholesterol. It can also influence the immune system.
How?
Well, some research has shown that it can interfere with that IFN gamma signaling we talked about earlier.
The inflammatory signal.
Right, by blocking the activation of a key protein in that pathway called STAT1.
Ah, so not blocking JAK, but the next step, STAT.
Exactly. And in animal studies, simvastatin even helped prevent and reverse pigment loss.
Okay, promising in mice. But the studies in humans have been a little less straightforward, haven't they?
That's correct. A bit of a mixed bag. While there have been some individual positive case reports, and one study suggesting benefits in people who also had high cholesterol.
Interesting caveat.
Yeah. But then a formal phase 2 trial actually saw the opposite. An increase in the vitiligo area, the VSI score went up, in the group treated with simvastatin.
Oh, not what you want to see.
Definitely not. The review points out that the oral doses needed for a systemic immune effect might be quite high, potentially leading to side effects, muscle issues, liver issues associated with high-dose statins.
Right.
So this has led researchers to explore whether applying simvastatin directly to the skin, topically, might be a better approach. Avoid the systemic issues.
Makes sense.
There are some early studies looking at topical forms of simvastatin, or a related drug, atorvastatin, combined with NBUV light therapy. These have shown some initial promise, but we definitely need more robust clinical trials.
Still early days for topical statins then.
Pretty much. Though interestingly, simvastatin also seems to have direct antioxidant effects on melanocytes, which could be another way it might potentially help.
Okay, multiple possible mechanisms. Moving on, the review talks about targeting cytokines, those signaling molecules of the immune system. One that's mentioned is IFN-alpha, and there's a trial looking at anifrolumab. That's an antibody that blocks the receptor for type I interferons.
Yes, exactly. Given that the body's initial immune response in vitiligo seems to involve these type I interferons, this is a logical target to explore.
Okay.
Anifrolumab is actually already approved for another autoimmune disease, lupus or SLE.
Right.
And this phase 2 trial is evaluating whether combining it with phototherapy can help people with progressive vitiligo, the kind that's actively spreading.
Okay, targeting the early signals. What about TNF-alpha inhibitors? Drugs like adalimumab and infliximab.
Yeah.
They're used widely for things like rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis.
Yeah, common biologics. The evidence for their use in vitiligo is less clear, though.
Really?
While there have been some isolated case reports suggesting some benefit with infliximab and etanercept in specific patients, The review really emphasizes that we just don't have strong evidence of consistent effectiveness in vitiligo.
So not a primary target right now.
Seems that way. We need larger, well-controlled studies to know for sure.
Okay. Regulatory T cells, or TREGs, and a signaling molecule called IL-2 are also discussed. What's the thinking there?
So TREGs are really important. They're the cells that normally help keep the immune system in check, prevent it from overreacting.
The brakes of the immune system.
Kind of, yeah. And they seem to be either low in number or not functioning properly in vitiligo. IL-2 is a cytokine that helps these TREGs survive and do their job.
So boost the TREGs.
That's the idea. A phase 2 trial is testing a modified version of IL-2 called MK6194. It's designed to specifically boost the number of TREGs in people with non-segmental vitiligo, hopefully restoring that balance.
Interesting approach. And what about IL-15? We touched on that a bit with ritlecitinib earlier.
Yes, IL-15. It seems to play a role in the survival of those tissue-resident memory T cells, the TRMs.
The ones that stick around in the skin.
Exactly. They might be why vitiligo can be so persistent or come back after treatment stops. And higher levels of IL-15 have been observed in people with more severe vitiligo.
Okay, so it correlates with severity.
It seems to. So a phase 2 trial is looking at AMG 714, which is an antibody that blocks IL-15, as a potential treatment for both active and stable vitiligo.
Targeting those memory cells, potentially.
That might be part of the goal, yes.
The review also mentions targeting immune checkpoints. Abatacept, a CTLA-4 fusion protein, is being investigated.
That's right. CTLA-4 is another molecule on immune cells that acts like a brake, helping to turn off T cell activation.
Another brake molecule.
Yep. And in people with vitiligo, the levels of CTLA-4 seem to be lower than normal.
So the brakes are weaker.
Potentially. So a phase 1 trial is exploring whether abatacept, which essentially mimics the function of CTLA-4, can help restore this balance and maybe reduce the immune attack on melanocytes.
Fascinating how many different angles researchers are exploring to tweak the immune response.
It really is. It highlights the complexity.
The review then shifts focus a bit to T cell metabolism. It mentions oxidative stress and problems with autophagy. That's like a cellular cleaning process, right, in vitiligo.
Exactly. Autophagy helps cells clear out damaged components.
And this leads to discussions about rapamycin and metformin, drugs we usually associate with completely different things, like organ transplants or diabetes.
Yeah, more repurposing. Rapamycin inhibits a protein called mTOR. It's shown some promising effects in lab studies on melanocytes and also in animal models by affecting TREGs.
Okay.
Given that mTOR also plays a role in autophagy, which seems to be impaired in vitiligo.
Ah, the connection.
Rapamycin is being investigated as a way to potentially improve melanocyte health and maybe boost autophagy. There's a clinical trial testing a topical rapamycin for smaller vitiligo patches.
Topical rapamycin, okay. And metformin, the diabetes drug.
Metformin is really interesting because it has such a range of effects. It activates an enzyme called AMPK. It acts as an antioxidant. It has anti-proliferative capabilities.
Wow.
And it also reduces mTOR activity, similar to rapamycin, which can lead to an increase in those helpful TREGs.
So multiple potential benefits for vitiligo.
That's the thinking. A phase 2 trial is currently evaluating its effectiveness and safety specifically for vitiligo.
Lots to watch there. Okay, next up is amelanocyte-stimulating hormone, or IMSH, and a drug called afamelanotide that mimics its effects.
Right. Afamelanotide is primarily used for a rare condition called erythropoietic protoporphyria, EPP, which involves sun sensitivity.
Okay.
It works by binding to a receptor called the melanocortin-1 receptor, or MC1R. Binding there stimulates melanocytes to produce melanin.
So directly boosting pigment production.
Yes. And it also seems to have some anti-inflammatory effects. Clinical trials have shown that combining afamelanotide, usually as an implant, with phototherapy
Another combination.
can lead to better repigmentation rates compared to phototherapy alone.
Studies have confirmed its effectiveness and general tolerability.
Any side effects? A common one is actually increased skin pigmentation, like tanning, which makes sense given its mechanism.
Hyperpigmentation, okay.
Yeah. And it's important to note it stimulates existing melanocytes but doesn't seem to create new ones from stem cells. There are ongoing phase 2 and phase 3 trials looking at afamelanotide both on its own and again in combination with NB-UVB.
Still exploring the best way to use it. Got it. Phosphodiesterase 4, or PDE4, inhibitors are also discussed. These are known for their role in calming inflammation in other skin conditions like psoriasis and eczema.
That's right. PDE4 inhibitors work by increasing the levels of a molecule inside cells called cyclic AMP or CAMP.
Okay.
Increased CAMP can then dampen down pro-inflammatory cytokines like TNF-alpha and boost an anti-inflammatory one called IL-10, so shifting the balance.
Makes sense for an autoimmune condition. What's the evidence in vitiligo?
So far, it's mostly from individual case reports with oral apremilast, which is approved for psoriasis, and topical crisaborole approved for eczema.
Okay. Anecdotal mainly.
Pretty much. Clinical trials combining apremilast with NBUVB have actually had mixed results, some positive, some less so. But some recent findings suggest apremilast might help slow down the progression of vitiligo and maybe speed up improvement when it occurs.
Interesting nuance.
Yeah. And there's a phase 2 study currently evaluating topical crisaborole and another PDE4 inhibitor, either alone or with phototherapy. So more data hopefully coming soon.
Okay. Now this one seems surprising. 5-fluorouracil, a chemotherapy drug, is also being looked at for vitiligo treatment.
It is an interesting application of an existing potent drug. Topical 5-FU is gaining some traction, often used alongside techniques like microneedling.
Derma rolling, right?
Yeah, or microneedling pens.
Right.
And sometimes lasers too. The idea is to help the 5-FU penetrate the skin better and enhance its effects.
And does it work?
Studies have shown that combining 5-FU with microneedling can lead to better repigmentation compared to using either treatment alone or 5-FU combined with other topical meds like tacrolimus. Some studies report pretty high response rates, over 75% improvement.
That sounds quite good.
It does. Injections of 5-FU directly into the skin, intradermal injections have also been explored and have shown good results, especially when combined with phototherapy. But they tend to have more local side effects, pain, burning, blistering.
Ouch. Okay, so topical might be preferred.
Often, yes, though the injections might be an option for stubborn spots.
Right. Trichloroacetic acid, or TCA, which is typically used for chemical skin peels, is another one mentioned in the review.
Yeah, TCA peels. The way TCA might work in vitiligo isn't totally clear, but the thought is it causes some controlled inflammation.
Okay.
Which could maybe stimulate the pigment-producing cells to multiply as part of the healing response. Kind of like post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, but hopefully in a controlled way.
Interesting theory. Any evidence?
One study reported a pretty good response rate, 80%, for vitiligo, specifically on the eyelids, using different concentrations. Response rates on other body areas were lower, though. Combining TCA with microneedling has also been investigated, with different concentrations showing varying degrees of success. But overall, more research is really needed to figure out the best way, if any, to use TCA for vitiligo and what the optimal concentrations are.
Still very much experimental for vitiligo.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay, what about pseudocatalase? This one was initially quite hyped, wasn't it? Based on the idea of counteracting oxidative stress in vitiligo.
It was. The theory made sense. Vitiligo skin seems to have higher levels of hydrogen peroxide oxidative stress. Pseudocatalase is designed to break down hydrogen peroxide.
Right.
And some early research, particularly from one group, suggested that a pseudocatalase cream, often combined with NBUVB light therapy, could halt the progression of vitiligo and even lead to significant repigmentation. Sounded very promising.
But?
Subsequent larger independent clinical trials just haven't been able to replicate those initial exciting findings. When compared rigorously to placebo or other active treatments, pseudocatalase hasn't consistently demonstrated a clear benefit for vitiligo. So the initial hype, unfortunately, hasn't really panned out in further studies.
That's disappointing. Okay, finally, the review mentions prostaglandins, things like latanoprost and bimatoprost, which are typically eye drops used to treat glaucoma.
Exactly. And people using these eye drops often noticed a side effect: darkening of the skin around the eyes, periocular hyperpigmentation.
Ah, the side effect clue again.
Yep, that sparked interest in their potential for vitiligo. Some lab studies suggested that latanoprost can boost the production of tyrosinase, that key enzyme in melanin production.
Okay.
And clinical studies have shown that applying latanoprost or bimatoprost topically, often in combination with phototherapy or microneedling again.
Seems like combination is a theme.
It really is. Can be effective in repigmenting vitiligo patches, especially on the face. There have also been studies injecting other related prostaglandins, like PGE2 and PGF2, directly into stable vitiligo patches, combined with NBUVB, which showed some promise too.
Interesting. So another potential topical option?
Potentially, yes. Seems fairly well tolerated, too.
Wow. This has been an incredibly comprehensive look at so many different potential treatments. Just amazing the breadth of research. Based on all of this, what do you see as some of the key things to keep in mind as we look to the future of vitiligo treatment? What are the big takeaways?
Well, first, it really underscores the complex nature of vitiligo, doesn't it? You've got both this overactive immune system and issues with melanocyte function and survival.
Right, the two main problems we started with.
Exactly. So it's likely that the most effective treatments, especially for more extensive or stubborn vitiligo, will probably need to address both of these aspects.
Makes sense.
Combination therapies, where we use drugs that target different pathways, maybe a JK inhibitor to calm the immune system, plus phototherapy or something to stimulate melanocytes, seem particularly promising. We saw that combo theme pop up again and again.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the big challenges we still face, though, is preventing the loss of repigmentation after treatment stops. Why does the color sometimes fade again?
The recurrence issue.
Right. And the persistence of those tissue-resonant memory T cells, the TRMs we mentioned, might be a key factor there. We need strategies to deal with them.
So, inducing remission is one thing, maintaining it is another.
Precisely. Phototherapy, like NBUVB, with its multiple beneficial effects, immune modulation, stimulating melanocytes will likely continue to be a cornerstone of treatment, often used in combination. And something else that's absolutely critical, highlighted in the review too, is that we need to conduct more research that specifically includes and focuses on the skin of people of color. Vitiligo can present differently, the impact is different, and potentially responses to treatment could vary in different skin types. We need that data.
That's a crucial point for equity in research.
Absolutely. And ultimately, for almost all these novel approaches we discussed, rigorous, large-scale clinical trials, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled, are essential.
The gold standard.
Yes. To truly confirm the effectiveness and safety, figure out the best dosages, the best combinations, and importantly, develop those long-term maintenance strategies to prevent recurrence.
So a lot of work still ahead, but a lot of promising directions.
Definitely.
So to kind of sum up then, we've explored this really exciting landscape of potential new treatments for vitiligo, everything from these highly targeted JAK inhibitors, which are already making an impact, to repurposing existing medications in really innovative ways, targeting different parts of the immune system or melanocyte biology.
Yeah.
It's clear that our understanding of vitiligo is really advancing, which is paving the way for more precise and hopefully much more effective therapies down the line.
Absolutely. While the approval of ruxolitinib cream was a significant step forward, a real landmark,
For sure.
the ongoing research into this diverse range of other candidates offers even greater hope for the future. It's such a constantly evolving field. Keeping an eye on the results of all these clinical trials we mentioned will be crucial for anyone affected by or just interested in vitiligo.
It certainly will, and it really makes you think, with all these different approaches being explored, the JAKs, the IL-15 blockers, the metabolic modifiers, the prostaglandin analogs, which of them, or maybe which combination, holds the most potential to really change the day-to-day reality for people living with vitiligo?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. It's definitely something to consider as this exciting research continues to move forward. Thanks so much for taking this deep dive with us today.
My pleasure. Fascinating topic.